Okay. The smell of incense in your nostrils.
Mm-hmm.
So, Buddha in our lives. Avalokiteshvara in our lives. That's what we're here for. Avalokiteshvara is the bodhisattva of compassion. She, he, they, first showed up, as best I can tell, in the Lotus Sutra. And it's in the third section of the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra is written in 3 chunks. The third chunk was written about 150 CE, and it's the section in which a whole bunch of bodhisattvas start showing up, and they don't just show up, they show up in the world. The first is much more traditional format, mostly arhats. The second, Buddha floats up into the sky, the bodhisattvas arise from under the earth. It starts to get much more mysterious and mystical, and it's very much got a Mahayana feel, lots of bodhisattvas around, but it's still, the Buddha and awakening. The third section, bodhisattvas show up and they start acting in the world, and the message comes through of awakening. It's about being in the world. The title of this chapter in the Lotus Sutra, because it's really one chapter, is something like, it translates as something like the universal gateway of regarded of cries of the world. That's roughly how it translates. It is also a standalone sutra in China. Now, it's not clear to me, I suspect it's not clear to anybody really, except people who have just formed opinions, which came first. That is a standalone sutra, or that is part of the Lotus Sutra. But it's in both. It's part of the Lotus Sutra and an important part of the Lotus Sutra, and it is a separate sutra. And there is a tradition where people will just have an Avalokiteshvara on the altar, and they'll pray for Avalokiteshvara, or Guanyin in China, for Guanyin to intercede in their lives, intercede in daily activities. And the way that chapter is written is very much call out to Guanyin, and she will intercede, she will help. So I'm going to look at the different components of the title, because there's important stuff in the components, and then we'll move on from there. Regarder of the cries of the world, the cries of the world. This is suffering, right? So we're regarding suffering. But Guanyin woke up to the cries of the world. So the sounds of the world are also a gateway to waking up. In the Zen tradition, there are a couple of stories that I remember. There are many more. But one, somebody asked the master about how they should practice, what they should do, and the master said, "You hear the sound of the stream? Enter there." Sound is a very wonderful game. There's another story where a contemplative monk, he was practicing his meditation while he was sweeping the front porch or something outdoors, and the broom caught a stone. The stone flipped and hit a bamboo stick, and there was a boom, the bottom fell out. That was his awakening. And I know I'm not the only person who's had this experience among this group here. I suspect I'm not the only person among this group here. There was one time I was sitting, it was a retreat, not a long retreat, 5 days, something like that. And about halfway through it, I was just sitting, and the teacher just rang the bell. The bottom fell out, and it was like hours, just went on for hours. Sound is an amazing gate. Regarder of the cries of the world, for self and for other. Regarder. It doesn't say listener to, it says regarder. Shakespeare did this in Midsummer Night's Dream. This was Bottom, said something along the lines of the ear has not seen, nor the eye has not heard. And this is very common. This shows up in a lot of Buddhist literature, not a lot, but it shows up in Buddhist literature as well. This almost, it's not synesthesia, but it's like senses not acting in the way we expect them to. Regarder of the cries of the world. How do we regard the cries of the world? We think about the heart opening, but that's simplistic. Regard the cries of the world. There, we've got two bodhisattvas up here, Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara, or Guanyin. There are classically four major Buddhas, major bodhisattvas. The other two are Samantabhadra and Kshitigarbha. Samantabhadra bodhisattva also shows up in the Lotus Sutra quite a lot. There's a whole chapter to him, and then there's the third of the three Lotus Sutras is actually about Samantabhadra. He's the bodhisattva of activity. Kshitigarbha is the bodhisattva of the earth. Earth store bodhisattva is how that translates. I'm using male pronouns, they're usually characterized as male, but that bodhisattva, I mean, they are neutral, right? So forgive me. That bodhisattva has a number of recognized roles. It goes into the hells to recover people from hells, in the same way that Avalokiteshvara is in this realm. Kshitigarbha enters other realms. In Japan, Kshitigarbha shows up as Jizo, which is the bodhisattva of children, of the dead. People have it on the dashboards of their car. So this is a very grounded bodhisattva. So if you think about it, these four represent, in a sense, the four elements. We have air with Manjushri, which is wisdom. We have water with Guanyin, which is the heart. We have fire with Samantabhadra, which is activity. And we have earth with Kshitigarbha, which is the earth, which is solidity, which is material. So, regarder of the cries of the world, this is about more than the heart. I think, to me, we have elements of Samantabhadra and Kshitigarbha concatenated onto Guanyin when we bring Guanyin into our practice and into our lives. When we regard the cries of the world, we regard with our whole body. When I had that experience I described, right, that wasn't the ears, that was the whole body responding. It's the whole body responding. When you experience suffering, you don't experience it in your head, you don't even experience it in your heart. You experience it in both, yes, but that's not enough. You experience it in your whole body. The body opens up. So a lot of this practice is about coming down into our bodies and letting our bodies open up and letting our bodies encounter the sounds of the world, not as oral signals, but as something richer, something more. And if you slow down for a minute, you know, I'm confident every one of you has had some kind of experience that resonates with this, some kind of experience where there's a sensitivity, a tenderness, an opening that happens when you hear something or when you see something that is more than what you see or what you hear or what you think. There's something deeper and richer that we're connected to. So the richness of Avalokiteshvara is in this richer and deeper opening up. Universal gateway. It is universal. The body goes with us everywhere. Everybody's got a body. So everybody, for me, everybody is Guanyin. Everybody is there offering me compassion. I'm not always able to see it, but everybody is offering that to me. And my practice is about showing up in a way that is meaningful for people, in a way that connects with people, meeting people where they are, so that I can be with them in their suffering. I'm going to tell a story, and then I'm going to say a few words to wrap up. The story is Angulimala. So many of you, most of you know the story of Angulimala. So this is in northern India 2,500 years ago. There was this, and this is a story in the Pali Canon, there's this individual, Angulimala, who had who was engaged in a spiritual practice with a teacher who had some, shall we say, dubious ideas. And this teacher, at some point when Angulimala's practice wasn't going so well, he suggested to Angulimala, you know, if you go collect 1,000 fingers from people you've killed, that will be a great step on your path, on your spiritual path. So Angulimala went around to kill 1,000 people, cut off their right index finger and stick them on a string. It's just, that was his practice. So, as you can imagine, this is terrifying to the locals. So Buddha was out with his bowl one morning in this village, and there was nobody there. All the doors were closed, and somebody opened the door and said, "Buddha, you need to hide. Come on in here. Come on in here. Angulimala's in town. He'll kill you." Buddha just carried on. And then there's this voice behind him, this stamping of feet, and this voice behind him saying, "Stop! Stop!" Buddha carries on walking. The voice says, "Stop! Stop! Why haven't you stopped?" Buddha says, "I stopped a long while ago. It is you that haven't stopped." So Angulimala runs in front of him to obstruct him and make him stop. He says, "Stop! Stop! What is it you're saying?" He said, you're chasing after yourself. The idea of engaging with this ferocious activity, the idea of the acts you're engaged in, it's going to bring suffering to you and it's going to bring suffering to other people. I have stopped my mind, and that no longer happens here. Angulimala says, "The world is full of really bad people. It's not safe. It's just not safe. I've got to protect myself and I need to revenge myself." And Buddha says, "I acknowledge there are bad people out there. And there's suffering out there. But there are also really good people out there. Have you met any of my monks? None of them is out for vengeance. None of them is causing harm." Angulimala says, he's intrigued. So the Buddha says, "I'll tell you what, if I were to offer you protection, would you be interested in coming and hanging out with my monks and wearing a robe and practicing as we do?" And Angulimala was definitely intrigued and decided that was a good idea. And at this time, one of either Shariputra or Subhuti, one of these guys showed up, and so Buddha had him shave his head and took him off to the ashram, I guess we'd call it today, where they all hung out. And so Angulimala started practicing and started meditating and practicing mindfulness. And a few weeks later, Buddha was in the same village with his bowl with some of his monks, and the king, whose name I should remember but I don't, but the king showed up with a whole bunch of troops. And Buddha said to him, "So what are you doing here? I thought there was some trouble on the frontier. I thought you were out there with all your army protecting the state." He said, "Oh no, that's all. We've taken care of that. But there is something we've got to take care of. There's this really bad person wandering around, Angulimala. He's just causing a lot of trouble, and so we had to catch him and kill him." Buddha said, if Angulimala were willing to give up that behavior, become peaceful, become a monk, would you still want to kill him?" He said, "No, if he were to do all those things, I'd be very glad to see him." So Buddha at that point stepped aside. Angulimala was standing behind him, and he said, "So this used to be Angulimala. His name is now Ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-violence, and that was his dharma name. This is now Ahimsa." And the king was just blown away, and the king said, "Oh goodness, can I offer you some clothing, some shelter, some food, some medicine?" Which are the 4 elements that monks are allowed to have. And Ahimsa said, "Thank you very much for your kindness, but I've got everything I need." So that's just, to me that's a heart-opening story and a body-opening story, the exchange between Buddha and Angulimala. Avalokiteshvara in our lives. When we encounter something that causes emotions or negative energy to rise in us, it's really easy to just let that happen. Avalokiteshvara in our lives would notice that and would turn that back and look at the other side. Because the other side is, there's suffering, there's something going on the other side. If we turn that around and look out, and we look at the suffering, we try and encounter the suffering, encounter the other person, understand the other person, and again, not understand with our mind, not even understand with our heart, understand with our mind, our heart, our whole body. Really be there, be present, notice, regard with compassion. That drops our own suffering, and it helps the other person, in this case Angulimala, drop their suffering. Happiness, our happiness, the happiness of other people, simply is not possible without compassion. Our happiness, the happiness of other people, arguably simply is our compassion.